Hi everyone, welcome to this week. We have a new kind of verb to learn. No new forms, no new endings, just a new way of thinking about verbs. I'll explain as we get to it. But these are deponents. All right, so here's the trick with deponents. They're sort of these funky verbs that are passive in form, active in meaning. And what that's going to mean is they're going to have passive endings. They're going to look passive, but they're going to be translated actively. So this is largely a vocab issue, meaning you've got to be able to identify which verbs are deponents. The good news is that most of them won't be able to be translated in the passive. They won't make sense as passive verbs. We've got to be able to recognize verbs that are deponents, and then just translate them. Remember to translate them in the active, even though they look passive. One thing to get used to is that you can see examples here that the principal parts will all be passive, of course, right? Because if deponents are passive, then it follows that their principal parts will be passive as well. So that is the main way to identify a verb as deponent, is that if its principal parts are in the passive. If in the vocab list all the principal parts are passive, that means that you're dealing with a deponent. Now you might notice that there are only 3 principal parts. That is because the traditional third principal part only has active forms. So if all forms are passive, there's nothing to be done with that third principal part. That third principal part won't exist. I at least will still refer to this principal part, the participle principal part, as the fourth principal part, even though in number for deponents it is the third. So I will still call it the fourth because functionally it is still the fourth principal part, that perfect passive participle form. The other thing to point out, and we'll look at this in greater detail as we go through, is that to identify conjugation, you're going to have to deal with passive infinitives instead of active infinitives. Now, for first, second, and fourth conjugation, that's going to be pretty straightforward because it's just going to be that RE, the active infinitive, to RI, the passive infinitive. So you're going to see basically the same form, just with a change of that one vowel, and it should be pretty recognizable. But it is the third and third IO. Those infinitives cause problems. If you remember, your whole ERE changes to an I. All right, so you can see, and let me make some space here. Apologies. Let me get rid of some of this stuff so we can see a little better. There we go. All right, so you can see here and here. Those are the infinitives, and that is the present passive infinitive form of a third conjugation verb. Again, remember, if we look at an active verb, a non-deponent verb, something like copio, copere. Copere is its active infinitive. Copy is its passive infinitive because the whole ERE changes to an I. And the idea, of course, is that with a deponent, you don't have that active. You just have the passive. But for third and third IO, you're going to have just that I ending for the infinitive ending. So that is just something to get used to. Slide, you saw the present, right? That is all here, first and second conjugation. All the endings, all the formations are exactly the same. It's just that they will use passive forms instead of active forms. Oh, and one thing I forgot to point out is here, which are these semi-deponent verbs, and all that means is it functions as a normal verb in the present tenses. That would be the present, the imperfect, and the future. So in other words, you'll have active endings and it'll be translated actively. It's for the perfect tenses that it'll function like a passive verb. All right, or sorry, function like a deponent. But anyway, if you just focus on conor, right, you can see passive endings, but active translations, and this is the present. All right, so you can see here, you just have the deponents kind of conjugated out in various forms, and then we have the imperfect and the future. So again, nothing new in terms of formation or ending or anything like that. It's just you have these verbs that are passive in form and active in meaning, and you just have to sort of keep that in mind. And again, down below here, the semi-deponent, because it's a second principal part of present stem tense, your forms are going to be active in form as well as active in meaning. All right. All right, now these are the perfect tenses. So again, you're forming the passive just like you form the passive of a regular verb, meaning for the perfect tenses, fourth principal part, and a form of the verb to be, but then you have an active meaning, all right? And here for the semi-deponents, now you have it functioning like a deponent where you've got passive forms with active meanings. Whereas for the present tense forms, it was active forms and active meanings. All right, and here's a list of deponents, all right, up here. All right, you can see that these are all deponents. These all have passive principal parts. That indicates that they are deponents, but you can see over here that their definitions are active. All right, so obviously these are from your book, and you should be aware of them, but just keep an eye on them. You also have some semi-deponents mixed in. Fido there. I guess that's the only one. I thought there was one more. No, I guess that's the only one. Okay. Oh, watch out for these. Again, we talked about them. These just second principal parts, present, passive, infinitives. Right? Those are the tricky ones to pick out because they don't look like infinitives, even though they are. All right, so you're just identifying these verbs as deponents, semi-deponents, or non-deponents, and you're just doing that by the principal parts. All right, so I'll do a couple for you. So passive principal parts, that's going to be a deponent. Active principal parts, note that's got all four, that's going to be a not deponent. And I sink down to number 4, active and then passive, that's going to be a semi-deponent. All right, so you can do the rest on your own, but remember you're just using the principal parts to identify whether it's a deponent, a semi-deponent, or a not. All right, now we're just identifying verb forms in terms of person and number, and then you're translating them. And the trick here, of course, is that when you're dealing with a deponent, make sure that you're translating them as translating them in the active. All right, so let's look at number 2. So more, right? This is my present. All right, passive. All right. And you should identify them based on the form, right? So in Latin, it is going to be a passive form because it has that passive ending. And then when you translate it, it becomes, and I'll go up here, we enter. Ingredior means to enter. All right. And then if I do another one, let's do number 12. So alsi sumus. All right, so that is a semi-deponent, but in the perfect, it's going to be translated actively, even though it's passive. So this is perfect, because it's using that present of the verb to be with the fourth principal part. So perfect passive. I'll translate it above here. We, and that we is female, so we women dared. And there's our perfect tense. All right, so you can do the rest on your own. Did the first couple for you. All right, so our customary mottos. Excuse me. All right, so you can see ad destinatum per sequor, and there's our deponent. All right, remember that with your deponent, you're translating it actively. So I, right, that's the R ending, that's that passive first person singular. So I pursue, or maybe persevere, may be better. All right, ad destinatum, to the end, or to the goal, something like that. All right, but the trick is, of course, you've got a passive form per sequor, and then an active translation. All right, another one, and again, sequimur, that's our deponent. All right, note the passive ending, but it's going to be active in meaning. So we follow the light, lucem. All right, light here. Potentially / probably a metaphor, right? Enlightenment, knowledge, something like that. But again, the important part is that passive ending, passive form, but active translation. All right, this is the University of Arkansas, and you can see here progredi. That is that deponent infinitive. All right, remember it's that lone I that's going to cause trouble. All right, but progredi, it's a third IO verb with that I for the passive infinitive. All right, but that is the infinitive. So to pursue, all right, with truth as leader. So where tate duke is that ablative absolute, with truth as leader, but progredi, to pursue. So passive form, but active translation, even with the infinitive. Doesn't have to be an indicative form, of course. And a related one, there's progredi again, known progredi this time, but then another, albeit related infinitive. So non progredi est regredi. So to not move forward, progredi, is est to move backwards, regredi. And note the difference in prefix, right? Pro forward, pro in front of, re back. All right, so to not move forward is to move backwards. All right, here is a text, just some practice translating. All right, so it is pleasing, consequi, and I will not translate it for you, but I will point out that that is an infinitive. The I just circled the QU just to give a little more space, make sure you can see the I. So it is pleasing, blank, excited wild beasts in their course, all right? And consequi means pursue. All right, it is pleasing, blank, rigid nets with a soft hand. And of course, yaculare, as it says, is throw. So you've got to translate it so that makes sense. All right, and then identify the conjugations. You're going to do that the same way, just by identifying the infinitives. Even though they're passive infinitives, you can still identify them. So for instance, yaculari, even though it's a passive infinitive, it still has that A, which makes it the first conjugation. All right, another one. So translate line 361, which of course is this one. So sequor, we did that in one of the mottos. All right, so I pursue Italy, I go to Italy, not of my own wish, not of my own volition. All right, and again, there's that passive form sequor, but translated actively. All right, number 2, or question 2 here. Is there an infinitive in 381? Explain your answer. So sequere looks like an infinitive, but it's a deponent, so it can't be an infinitive. Right, that is the passive imperative. All right, but if it were infinitive, it would have to be an active infinitive. Deponents don't have active forms, and so that cannot be an infinitive. All right, let's take a look at these infinitives. All right, so here is a paragraph for you to translate. All right, so ita proelim restitutum est, atque omnes hostes terga verterunt, neque prius fugeret destiterunt, quam ad flumen renum milia passuum ex eo loco circuiter quindecum per venerant. All right, so sentences are getting a little longer, so it becomes more and more important to sort of break them up into chunks. So I'm going to deal with this part first. All right, so thus battle was renewed. Right, proelim restitutum est, so battle started up again. All right, and now I go to my next verb, verterunt, and all the enemy turned their backs. All right, so it took off. All right, so just take it from the beginning again. Thus battle was renewed, and all the enemy turned their backs. All right, and didn't stop fleeing. So neque destiterunt, fugeret, didn't stop fleeing before the river Rhine. All right, and the prius, as the note says, kind of goes with the quam here. All right, so thus the battle was renewed, and all the enemy turned their backs and didn't stop fleeing before the river Rhine. All right, really before they came to the river Rhine. Per venerant is the verb for this up here. All right, which was around. All right, so it was around 50 miles from this place. Quindecum milia passuum ex eo loco. All right, so I'll let you do the rest. And then the writing, you're translating into Latin. So for certain women, don't use certus a Remember to use what we learned before, which is quidam, quidam, quodam, quidam. Sorry about that. All right, you use that substantively, so you use a feminine form in whatever case it needs to be. All right, and then build from there. All right, that is all for this week. Please email me if you have any questions, and I will be here next week. Thanks.